Hello, this is Ben, and this is another update video. I realized I hadn't updated these videos in a good couple of months. I think it's been a month and a half at least since I last put one up here, and there's been a good reason for that. I have been incredibly busy. It's been a very busy August and September, and so far it's been an incredible experience, but it's also been a very incredibly busy experience. So I thought I better put one up here just to update, even if it's just for me in 5 years' time, rewatching this video and reminding myself of what happened. So to cut to the chase, so in September, as of 2 weeks ago, I started at the Transformational Arts College down in Toronto studying spiritual psychotherapy. And that's been a year, pretty much a year in the running now. I started putting together my application about a year ago, October time. So it has been a year, and what a fast year. It's really flown by. 2017 I find has just flown by, a lot more than 2016 did. But anyways, so a year ago I started putting together my application. February, when I started, around this time that I started these videos, I submitted my application, and then finally, after months and months and months and months of waiting, finally the program began. So it was an incredible weekend. It really was. It was one of those weekends where I could feel things changing. I could feel the growth inside of me. So in 2 years' time, when the program is officially finished, I'm sure I'll be a very different person. At least I hope I'm a different person, different in a good way. So probably more on what I've learned in another video. This is just the update. I do want to keep track of kind of my progress through doing the courses and some of the insights I've gleaned, some of the information. But for right now, this is an update video, so we're not going to go into that. But suffice it to say, it was quite an incredible weekend. And when I walked in, well, actually, one thing that I should say, when I walked in, I didn't feel any anxiety. I didn't feel out of place. I didn't feel like I was unwelcome, which before, for many years, that's always been my issue. When I go into a crowd of complete strangers, and I think I only knew one person in that room, and that was the director. I didn't feel like I didn't belong there. I felt completely at ease. I felt like I could, talk to anybody in the room, walk up and introduce myself. And so that was a huge thing I took away from the weekend, amongst other things. So anyways, yes, nobody bullied me, nobody called me names, nobody made me feel like I was, the loser and I couldn't sit at a popular table or anything like that. So for a first day of school, I think it was pretty good. So the past couple of weeks before that, as I said, I've been very busy, and it has been almost every weekend that I've had something going on. So there's a lot of flies around me right now. I don't know why they all... I think they want the limelight of however many 5 followers who watch this. Anyways. Yeah, it's been a very busy August, and it's almost been one weekend after another that something's been going on. So in the middle of August was our spiritual group, Tribal Hearth's main festival gathering. Not festival, gathering. And I knew kind of what was happening for a good month or so beforehand. And so I wasn't unprepared. This gathering was particularly meaningful for me because 2 years ago, around this time 2 years ago, is when I first came into this group and started working with them and introduced myself. And it's bizarre that it's only been 2 years, because I feel like I've known these people a lot longer. It's been a very fast 2 years, but a very slow 2 years at the same time. I'm completely different from who I was 2 years ago. Completely different from who I was even 6 months ago. So the change that has happened and taken place while being part of this group has been quite palpable. So this year, one of the individuals who was leading the ritual aspect decided to to cut down and step aside a bit to focus on other things in his life. And so 2 new directors came in and started organizing the ritual aspect. So when I joined this group, I was I think I've spoken of this in previous videos, and probably majority of people who are going to watch this, I'm looking at you, Fallon, will know what this all is, so it doesn't really, I mean, it's no shock to anybody. I think the majority of the people in that group are also on my friends list on Facebook there. So probably nothing new, but for those who aren't aware, so Tribal Hearth worked a great deal with Joseph Campbell's hero cycle. So each event that I was part of was one ritual that was also part of a broader story. So it was an episode in a story that we were slowly working through. And when I first joined the group 2 years ago, I was chosen to embody one of the archetypes that we were working with. So there were 3 seekers that were chosen, and then throughout the course of the ritual cycle, my 2 fellow seekers changed or died and evolved into another archetype. So by the end, which this year was the end of that cycle, there was myself as the seeker. There was somebody who was the deceased champion. So she wasn't actually deceased, don't worry, she wasn't actually deceased, but she had taken on the role of champion. And then there was another who was a poet, and she actually came, or the woman who embodied the poet, she was actually coming from Australia. She was originally from Canada, but she was living in Australia, and she would come back for these events, which I mean, even now I'm in awe over, and it was very special to have her with us. So anyway, so the 3 seekers, we were supposed to go in with this until next year, but with the change over, it was decided that they would kind of focus on other archetypes. So this past August event, which marked the 2-year anniversary for me being part of this group, also meant the ending of that cycle. And so I had very mixed emotions about it, I'll be honest with you. And I've spoken to individuals who helped to organize this and direct this. And what I realize now, what I was feeling, because when they told me that they were closing it, and that they would be moving on, as the group would be moving on to a different cycle, and a whole other new group of archetypes, I felt very annoyed. I felt very angry, I felt very pissed off, and what I came to realize was that I was going through a bereavement process. Because being chosen 2 years ago, and playing this very unique and special part, well, not special, it was a unique part, and it was a unique experience, I became very closely connected with the archetype I was embodying. And I took it, and I still take it very seriously, and I do still see it as a huge responsibility. And so I became very connected to the archetype. And so when I was told that, that this would be ending, and that this experience would be ending for me as an individual, I went through the motions of, denial. Oh no, it won't really change. To being pissed off, to spite, pettiness. And then I started to realize, when I actually started looking at the time frame and looking at the time of it happening right now, I started to see whether or not the 2 individuals who were directing this saw it that way or knew it. It fit almost perfectly into where my life had been leading up to this point for over 2 years. I identified last year, and I think I've spoken about this in another video, that my life tends to figure into 10-year cycles, 5-year cycles, and 2-year cycles. And then when I realized that this was ending right as I was just about to start school in Toronto, it all started to make a lot more sense. It started to make it a lot clearer You know, kind of that this really was an important and auspicious time for this to end. This work that I started with this group 2 years ago. And then after that, I started to realize what a blessing it was, and how incredible kind of the universe works, you know. And when I say that, I don't want to sound like, oh, the universe is just, you know, reorienting all of reality around me and my experiences. No, but what I have found and learned over the past couple of years is that events play out in very mysterious and very synchronicital ways. And it just so happened that this 2-year ending mirrors exactly what 10 years ago was like. Because in 2007, I was coming to an end of a 2-year college program at Humber College, and was about to just go into university. And that 2 years that I had back in 2005 to 2007 was a pivotal time in my life, because I was away from school. I was really building my life again, right? Because I was away from school. All of my few friends that I had through high school were still up in Hanover, and I was in the city for the first time. And then shift to 2015, and I was in the exact same kind of frame of mind. I was, you know, rebuilding my life again. I was going into social circles I'd never been part of before, and I had been so embraced and welcomed into this tribal hearth group, and through it I've been introduced to some incredible people in the community, you know, spiritual masters and spiritual elders, and people who've been practicing, you know, occultism and spirituality and esotericism and all this, some of them for over 40 years. So it's like, it's incredible to me how it mirrors where I was 10 years ago and now. And when I started to realize that and put all of that together, I was like, yeah, I'm so down for this. And it really allowed me to let go. And so how this cycle worked, or this last event worked, was a group of us were approached to act as shrine keepers, and throughout the property that we do our event at, we erected little shrines to archetypes that the whole group, everybody in the group could connect with in their own personal way. So little shrines were put up with little effigies, and 9 of us were chosen to create these effigies and decorate them and create like little ritual and something like that. So everybody in the spiritual group, the whole 150 of us, although I think this past event there were a fewer number, but everybody who attended the event could go to these shrines and connect with that archetype. And the archetypes ranged from, you know, there was like the trickster, there was the witch, mine was the hierophant, there was the gatekeeper, the mother, you know, archetypes that kind of are reflected in deities and spirits, but are also very deep rooted as well. So that was an interesting event. So the event kind of evolved so that it would be like the final goodbye of the seeker that I was embodying, because they've chosen not to take that archetype and embody it in the same way as they have done in the past 2 cycles. So before I joined 2 years ago, there was another 7 event cycle with another seeker and another champion and another poet. And so they decided to retire the seeker, and part of the ritual of me kind of ending the cycle for myself, and it was a very emotional part to play. When the effigies were all paraded around and brought to a central fire, which is our sacred ritual fire, and I was, so the other 2 who embodied archetypes, each came forward and said a little thing, and throughout this weekend all of the members of our group were invited to come down to another ritual space and help to weave a communal mat made out of plants found on the campground. And so the mat, which was created from every single person contributing to it, was taken and placed onto the fire and burned. So it started to become a funeral, really. And each of the individuals who had taken a unique role, I don't want to say special because it wasn't special, it was a unique role within the past couple of years. Each came forward and said, something to the whole group, and there must have been about, I want to say there was about 50, 60, 70 people surrounding that fire. And the whole group, so everybody placed things into the fire, said, a little farewell message, or said something that they had learned. And then I came and was invited to burn a staff that I had been given in the previous year, so 1 year ago. And I just started tearing up, and I choked up at times, I know I did. And I really explained from a very deep place of heart what the experience had meant to me. And even now, I start to feel very emotional about it because it has changed my life. It really has affected me in so many positive ways. It's helped me to face demons which I knew I had buried a long time ago. It helped me to feel like I was valued again, and it also helped to prepare me for the work I'm moving into. Every single campfire, every single conversation I've had over the past 2 years, everybody I've met, everyone I've been introduced to, the experiences I've had, have each contributed to me finding myself again. And this was, if the past 2 years has proven anything to me, it is the power of finding myself. Although not finding these little flies that keep flying around, my god. Anyways, so finding myself, and finding myself in others, building compassion for, something that would be quite different from what I would assume. I remember when I first joined this group, I in my first event, and I think I've spoken about it in previous videos. If I didn't, I originally came to Mythwood to vend. I'd been invited. I just met Cayman and Alex a week before, or 2 weeks before, and it was I'd spoken very briefly, and when I heard that about what they were doing with the campground, I was really interested. My little ears perked up, and I said that I vended crystals and gems and things like that, and so came and said, oh well, we've got this event going on in 2 weeks' time. You should come, especially being that I live only half an hour away from this place. So I ended up going, and originally it was just because I wanted to make money. I set up my little tent and put up all my products. And when I started looking at the schedule, it was, oh no, I just want to go to this one. Oh no, I have to hear this one. Oh, I'm really curious about this. So I ended up spending a lot less time in my tent than I had intended to. But what I gained was so much more than just money. I gained a community. And to go from that to being so invested in this group, to stand around a campfire bawling my eyes out because I felt so much love and appreciation for these people and for the experience I'd gone through, was quite incredible. And I swear that for the rest of my life I will always remember that moment of standing in front of them. And and being able to explain, even in a few limited words, what it meant for me. And to be able to share then afterwards, even now, sharing with you people, there might be some of you who don't even know who I am. You've never met me before. You might have just stumbled upon this, and to be able to share, it's such a privilege to be able to share that. And I'm not doing a very good job. I mean, let's be honest. We're at the 20 minute mark, and I've just been like going on and on and on. But being able to explain, even if I'm bumbling on, what has happened and what I've gained, is such an honor and privilege. And so I took the staff in hand, and I went out and I made the point to everybody assembled there that what I was embodying wasn't just my adventure, it wasn't just my experience, it was also theirs, and that it was theirs to take up, that they were the heroes of their story, that they had the duty, the responsibility to go forward into life, into their life, and play the parts that they both assigned themselves and aspire to play. And I raised the staff up, and then I placed it onto the fire. And this staff had been sat in my bedroom for a year. It was in the corner of my bedroom for a year. I looked at it every day, and I made the point: let this staff, and it's burning, light your way. And it burned so beautifully, it burned so brightly, and it was such a beautiful fire. It really was. It was a gorgeous, gorgeous sacred fire. So that came to an end, and 2 years' work came to an end, and then a few weeks later, something incredible happened. Something even more incredible happened. So Tribal Her Fire ended. I started with them 2 years ago. Within 2 weeks of meeting Cayman and Alex 2 years ago, I also met Tiffany Lazick down at Hyven Grove in Kitchener, and I've spoken about her on here before. I know I have. I'm sure I have. Probably in the hour long if you can find it. So anyways, so I met Tiffany, and I started doing classes down there within 2 weeks of each other. And those courses have mostly ended now. There's a couple of more courses I'm doing at the Hive, but most of the courses I'm doing now is at the TAC down in Toronto. So really, that phase of working at the of going to the Hive is pretty much over. It's coming to an end. So 2 weeks after Her Fire was an event that I've been helping Cayman and a few others put together called Occulticon, and I don't think I've spoken about it on here, but Occulticon was a new convention idea put together by Cayman and a bunch of us that really focused less on paganism and more on the occult. So bringing in speakers who were ceremonial magicians. We had somebody who is connected with the Voodoo Temple down in New Orleans, Witch Doctor Utu, who is part of the Dragon Ritual Drummers. We had some left-hand craft people coming down from Montreal and Ottawa. We had a couple of pagans who were speaking about very specific magical arts that they do. And I also was very honored to be a speaker as well. I spoke on the history of psychology and occultism, and it's a very fascinating history. I'll probably do a video of it at some point and bore you all to tears. Anyways, We also had a ceremonial ceremony. So a couple of friends of mine and their group's leader, Freyta Arceus, came and created a very stunning ritual in the middle of the sacred grove, the Grange at Miffwood, and that was a really cool thing to go through. So really, Occulticon was a very interesting weekend. I took on the role of vendor coordinator, so I was helping to bring in a lot of the vendors. We ended up having 20 vendors who were selling all manner of different things. And something I'm really proud of is suggesting it to Tiffany, who, as I've said, she has a hive in Grove. She's the TAC teacher that I've been working with for the past 2 years, and Tiffany works a lot with spiritual alchemy, and especially alchemy as a psychotherapeutic model. Tiffany is the writer of The Great Work by Llewellyn International, and it's a guided I don't want to say self-help course. It's a guided psycho-spiritual course over a year-long period, going through the different 8 of the Wheel of the Year, and also includes a lot of alchemy and alchemical processes. So it's an amazing book. I haven't read it all the way through yet. I'm going to start eventually, so Tiffany, who has been and is one of my teachers, came up to Miffwood to present on spiritual alchemy. And so Occulticon is very meaningful for me, not only because I was able to help to build this new convention and help to make it a success, but it was special for me because the 2 groups that have been so pivotal in my life for the past 2 years suddenly came together. I had teachers from Tribal Hearth and other elders in the community who I'd gotten to know over the past 2 years, many of them quite well, were at Miffwood at the same time, and then Tiffany and a couple of people connected with the TAC came in, and they were all in one space interacting with each other at the same time, and oh my god, synchronicity was like left, right and center. I couldn't turn around without somebody bumping into somebody they hadn't seen in 10 years and didn't realize would be there, and oh my god. So what was particularly special for me, there were 2 parts connected to that. So being able to guide Tiffany and a couple of other people around the sacred sites of Miffwood that have been connected with Tribal Hearth events and pivotal moments in my own story over the past 2 years. Being able to guide them around and explain and show and tell them the stories of what happened was very special. It was very meaningful for me. And then something completely unexpected happened near the end. So Tiffany and another person who came, one of the owners of Miffwood, had spoken only very briefly, and then suddenly they found out there was a connection between the 2 of them, which was very interesting. 15 years ago, there was a group, a Celtic spirituality group, and they had a maypole, and Tiffany is part of a group called the Sisterhood of Avalon, and she also has a maypole in her center, and it's always been in the back corner of the room, the space that we do all of our classes. It's a very beautiful maypole. So the 2 of them start talking, and somehow, and I don't know quite how, I'm not going to ask, but somehow they came to understand that the maypole that had been made 15 years ago by one of the groups is the exact same maypole that is sitting in Tiffany's classroom at the Hive and Grove. So what bizarre, well no, I'm not going to say bizarre, because it's not bizarre. This is an example of what I'm talking about when I talk about synchronicity, of the way the universe kind of works in mysterious ways, right? What a weird WYRD, weird situation that two women who have been a part of my life over the past 2 years in different ways would meet, and somehow an object that was intimately connected with one of them is intimately connected with the other, and I have been kind of around both of them over the past 2 years, and around this object for the past 2 years, linking them both together. Like, what a very... it's fantastic. I absolutely... Like, that, when I found that out and I was told about that connection, it just made my day. So that was very meaningful, to know that these, like, it's like that full circle, right, you know? So that was very meaningful. Occulticon was also quite meaningful because there were quite a few people who came up that I didn't really know too much about, and listening to their presentations kind of opened up my landscape a bit more. I really connected with quite a few of them, and also connected with quite a few of the vendors. And it was meaningful. Another meaningful aspect was one of our vendors who was coming in from Thunder Bay came, and I just love this. I'm talking to one of the other vendors who lives locally, but I didn't know. Turns out that this woman lived in Neustadt, where I'm currently living, 15 years ago or 17 years ago. I've lived in town here for 20 years, and I've only briefly moved away to Toronto for school. Because I kept looking at her, and I was thinking, how do I know you? I know you somehow. You know, when you look at somebody and you can, you know, there's that recognition. But I couldn't place her, right? So when I found that out, it was like, well, I must have passed this woman, you know, hundreds of times when I was a child, when I was a kid, right? Very strange. Anyways, so another vendor came over, and the same thing happened. He looked at her, and she looked at him, and there was a recognition, but they couldn't place each other, right? And then suddenly, it turns out, and it all came out, that they were in the same Druid Grove 10 years ago, just outside of Mount Forest. And how incredible and special is that, right? You know, that they were at this event, didn't even know they would be both there, hadn't really been in contact, I assume, and suddenly they're both there at the same time, and how, you know, mysterious, right? What was very interesting for me too was that this vendor who was coming from Thunder Bay, or this grove, I should say, was organized by two druids who are connected with Obod. And Obod is the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, which is based in the UK, down in Lewes, which is just north of where I used to work in 2010, Hurstmonceau Castle. So the Obod has been going around, it's been running for about 50 years. It's one of the bigger druid organizations, and it's the organization that I'm aspiring to very soon start their training program in the Bardic grade. And so to meet these two people, and then the two druids themselves, the people who created and maintained the grove, came, and I was introduced. And I assumed that, you know, it would be one of those, it would be a very lonely situation going into Obod, because I only knew a few people in Ontario who were a part of it. I know there's a bigger population out there, but to have individuals who had started a grove are quite connected with the Archdruid, Philip Cargom, to be so close as I start this process of joining the order and studying with them, was just one of those little signals, like the little poke from the universe, you know, you're going in the right direction. All these like little synchronicities happening. It contributed to the whole weekend just being like a weave, like I could feel the weave of the universe around us, right, bringing us all together. So out of that, there's probably going to be some potentials. But I just found it really very interesting and very very powerful. So that was Occulticon, and that was about 2.5 days of just going, but I loved every minute of it. It was one of those events which was just, it was just so chill, it was so relaxed. So that was great. And then the week after that, so 2 weekends ago, I started school down in Toronto, and I will make another video of that because in future days I will want to watch it myself. So you can watch it if you want, you don't have to watch it. So then moving forward, this past weekend, a friend of mine who I had not met yet, but was intimately connected with quite a few people in Ontario here, came over on holiday down to Hamilton. And so this past weekend I was invited, I was honoured to go down and be invited to one of his little groups, Mabon festivities, or rituals I should say. And I hesitate to say Mabon because I don't really want to say Mabon, but that's what he was using. So I hung out with him over that weekend. Ended up coming back on the Saturday night, which was a long drive, a very long drive to get back up to Hanover. I didn't realize that Hamilton was so far away, but I really enjoyed my time down there. It was really great to see him and meet him, and he's educated me this past half year, I guess. It's been a half year or a year? I think it's been almost a year. I can't remember. Anyways, let's say 8 months. He's really been educating me on African traditional religions, which has been very, very unique and very interesting to go through, especially hearing it from an insider's perspective. So that's been quite special, and I really enjoyed getting to know him. But that meant also that it was a weekend where I didn't have a lot of time by myself, so I came home, and on Sunday I just vegged. So this coming weekend is the second weekend in the 23 months of the TAC, and yeah, it's going to be quite an interesting weekend. I'm starting to slow down a bit more now. There's not a lot going on until pretty much next year when it comes to festivals or events or anything like that, and I need the time. Something that I promised and said that I would do with with Tribal Hearth was to write a small memoir, kind of on my experience over the past few years, and what I've learned as part of that seeker experience, to bring that wisdom I've gathered back to the tribe, and that's something I really need to do. I really need to sit down now that I've had a few weeks of being able to put things into perspective, to make linkages and see the bigger picture. And even now, I mean, like, I'll wake up sometimes and I'll think, wow, I didn't see that, because another linkage had come in. The past 2 years really has just been like a web. It's been incredible, and it's all brought me to where I am now. So that's my update of my spiritual life. Almost 40 minutes of it there, but in regular life I'm doing absolutely fine. My dog is wonderful. She has a Facebook page now. Look it up. Her name is Lily, and she's always whittering away on Facebook about something. But in general, I'm in a very good place. I'm in a very positive place. Not that I wouldn't be in a positive place, but I'm in a very non-stressed place. I feel like circles have finally completed, ready for another circle to begin. Cycles have ended and begun again. And I'm good. I'm good. I'm a lot better than I was 2 years ago. I'm in a much more healthy place, and I'm in a place where I can start to develop those professional aspects of myself, which I haven't been focusing on so much because I've been focusing on my personal aspects. So I'm ready. With school, I'm a little bit nervous about what will be brought up. I'm a little bit nervous about kind of being triggered and being challenged, and at the same time I'm also looking forward to it as well, because I still have a lot to unpack. Everybody has a lot to unpack, right? But I'm genuinely interested in seeing how I'll be affected by it all. So, that is my update. Thank you so much if you're still listening. If you're not listening to this, then oh well, that's your fault. But if you are still with me, thank you so much for joining me for the past 40 minutes. And I hope that you all out there in the middle of internet land are having a wonderful and life-changing time yourself. See you later. Have a good day. Bye-bye.